you must know that as you recognize that you are the outward skin, the outward bark, holding this great inward fullness, then you don't associate the outer with the depth of your truth, but actually the nourishing fullness that is expressed through your outer form becomes the deeper desire and the way that we begin to see and perceive ourselves. And this is why we move from, I should say, when we move into the knowledge of the body being the chalice of the crucible, we're really going to start moving into the revelation of the Son and also the revelation of the three births. The three births, and why aspiration brings up this knowledge, why the star brings up this knowledge, that as we aspire, we start to energetically perceive that we are moving toward a realization that our self is not only more than we imagined, it's more than we can imagine. So we are moving out of a context of the isolated self into truly the multidimensional, or the symphonic self. And this is where in the moon then, we have from the first birth, as I like to put it, is really the birth we are given into time and shared experience. The second birth is where we start to move into the qualities of the moon. And this is why this, it's very interesting in the traditional tarot, and I'd always been bothered by it. It's usually shown as a tower, a little stream, and a crayfish, and a wolf. And then you read about it, and rather than it expressing the true power of the moon, for the most part it becomes about the murkiness of the moon. And I realized that a lot of that had to do with a lot of the older metaphysics, a lot of sort of patriarchal senses, or the misunderstanding of the power of woman, the power of the feminine. And this is something that's actually returning collectively. And that's why we have to dig more deeply than an elevation of cultural femaleness, and really return it to what we would have to say mythic feminine, or the heroic feminine, because in that realization we begin to see that it's not something in the unique body, but that every body that holds the knowledge of this deep feminine reflects in time the story of our universal journey. And that's something to be very proud of. That's something to hold oneself high and say, yes, I am the source, font, and origin of all being and becoming. And this is where the moon wants this type of honor. And it's very intriguing, because when we look here, we start to see the journey, and everything in these images have to do very much with a journey, a process of becoming, of individuating. And this is where we move into the second birth. And we'll start to see, and really most thing is Icarus here. And the myth of Icarus, of course, is he and his father build wings of wax, and his father says, do not fly too near the sun. And of course, being a kid, you listen to your dad, so he flies too close to the sun and falls back to earth. And here Icarus has fallen back to earth. He has died, his head is bleeding, and in that blood, in that moment, he's realizing that he mistaked God. He made a mistake, that God was outside himself, that it was something one had to get closer to. And therefore, taking the wrong instruments, wax, he created that which allowed him to fly, but he didn't fly by nature. He was flying because he had invented a way to get there quickly. And what the moon says is there are no shortcuts in consciousness. You cannot grow an embryo to birth in 3 months. It doesn't work. There are natural cycles. As a matter of fact, the moon is the mother of cycles and of time. She is all about the realization that you are billions of years old. Therefore, your handbook on being human is not simply the cultural model of yourself. The handbook on being human is everywhere you see human, you see yourself. You are an ancient entity, and therefore this ancient entity across vast ages has been pulling out of itself things that for us even at times look very alien, very strange, and how is this human as well? Isn't that wonderful? That's part of the mystery, and that's part of the mystery she wants us to know, is that you are not what you think you are. You are so much more than you think you are. And if you're going to resist me and say, oh no, I am this and I deserve to be in charge and in control, she will sweep you aside like a piece of grain. It is that simple, because she looks, and as I like to point out, and this is really what I've gotten from the work, she looks at each of us as an ancient beloved. And when we get very small and very uninteresting, she's very uninterested in our timely personality that has decided it wants to cower in a corner and call itself human for the convenience of living a safe little life for a few years and then dying in a retirement home. She says, you are adventurers in consciousness. You are my sacred lover that I sent into time to find yourself, and in finding yourself you would bring back worlds that would honor the journey that you are composed of, me. And so this is where we see Icarus laying at the bottom. He has been born. You see, there's a double birth here. One is the birth into time, and the other then is the birth that must be sought. And so as we start to see the waters arising and falling back, we're really looking at evolution and time and the turning and churning of consciousness as it moves across these vast fields of time and experience. And this is why with Icarus, having fallen back to earth, having realized that his first sin or mistake was thinking God outside himself, and then he starts to realize, this is a journey, and the journey begins here, and we start to see the new moon, the crescent, that is beginning to dawn over the waters of the primordial dark, the great oceans of consciousness. And out of these great oceans of consciousness, the serpent of evolution drapes itself over the lunar crescent. But here the lunar crescent also tells us a story. This is an ark. This is a boat, the lunar ark. What is this about? What the mystery of this is about is that the lunar ark is our subjective inward knowing. We are, through our own unique creative and imaginative energies, our own subjective reality, to create a ark or a boat that allows us to navigate our own ancient depths. And this is very important because she's entirely instrumental in not only the development of this ark, of this lunar boat, but insistent upon it. And this is why the real story is about the ancientness of all the forms and conditions that support us with absolute generosity to end up with one of these bodies we think of as our own. And therefore we see how consciousness falls down into the wave of time, into the crystalline, into the mushroom. Of course, the mushroom again has to do with the moon, that which grows at night, hallucination, sleep, because the moon has to do with the qualities of sleep, has to do with the qualities of obsession, and it also has to do with the truth that we are continually, in terms of our deeper knowing, dealing with that which can't be seen but really is hidden from the eyes. And this is why the Hebrew letter attributed to the moon is Kof, or the back of the head, meaning the back of the head, that which cannot be seen directly, and yet informs us absolutely. This is where the medulla oblongata is, where really the primitive we think of as the reptilian mind or the fight or flight. But basically, this is not simply that reduction of fight or flight. It is the doorway that allows us to finally enter the capacity to think. Because if we do not learn our fight and flight, our supposedly reptilian energies, are in truth great, enormous engines of action, then we always say, this is not my energy, it's not my engine, but it is someone else's. I shouldn't be feeling these things. Essentially as though it's stopping us down, it's keeping us from allowing the full bore of our consciousness to emerge. And so she is a stopgap measure, because the emergence of the true inner sun would dissolve the unready foundation. This is what people don't understand. They think that you can just open the portholes wide and suddenly you're going to get it, as though this is all wrong, and there's a version that if you could just glimpse it, you'd get it right, and that would be the true truth. Actually, that would be called a delusion, because we'd all be standing on this stage going, I don't know, he keeps talking to the wall, telling me he's seen it. We're here to transform not our own personal experience, but in our transformed personal experience, to transform what it means to be human. Our responsibility is not simply to ourselves or to enlightenment,